All right, so you say Jeremiah 23 is about the righteous descendant. Um, where does Jeremiah 23 talk about a righteous descendant? Because it says, "Woe to the pastors that destroy and scatter the sheep of my pasture," says Jehovah. And then it talks about, "I will gather the remnant of my flock out of all the countries where I've driven them." So it's talking about the second Exodus. And then he says, "I will set up shepherds over them, which shall feed them," which connects to Isaiah 52, which is talking about the watchman, right? So the days come, says Jehovah, that I will raise unto David a righteous branch, and a king shall reign and prosper and execute judgment and justice in the earth. But then it goes on, that's the only part that talks about anything being righteous. The rest of it is talking about, "Woe to these pastors that destroy and scatter my flock." And then my Jeremiah 23 says what those pastors are going to be doing. Right? It says that, "I have seen folly in the prophets of Samaria. They prophesy in Baal and cause my people Israel to err." And then the prophets of Jerusalem, he sees a horrible thing. They commit adultery and walk in lies, and strengthen also the hands of the evildoers, that none does return from his wickedness. They are all of them unto me as Sodom, and the inhabitants thereof as Gomorrah. That doesn't sound very righteous. And then it goes on to talk about the whirlwind, which is the 144,000, right? And then it says, "In the latter days you shall consider this perfectly." This isn't sounding like a very righteous branch. And then it also says that in verse 27, it says, "How long will these prophets prophesy lies, which think to cause my people to forget my name by their dreams, which they tell every man to his neighbor, as their fathers have forgotten my name for Baal?" That doesn't sound righteous at all. So I'm confused why you would say Jeremiah 23 is about a righteous descendant when there's only 2 little verses that say that. And then also at verse 33 all the way to the end, it says that these prophets who are lying are going to be saying, "What's the burden of the Lord?" And he says, it says, "You shall say unto them, what burden? I will even forsake you, says Jehovah." So that whatever people are saying, this burden of the Lord, Jehovah's going to forsake them. That doesn't sound very righteous. And then it says, therefore, in verse 39, "Therefore, behold, I, even I, will utterly forget you, and I will forsake you and the city I gave you and your fathers, and cast you out of my presence. And I will bring an everlasting reproach upon you, and a perpetual shame which shall not be forgotten." That sounds terrible. That doesn't sound like righteous people. That doesn't sound like a righteous descendant. And even in verse 36, it says, "The burden of the Lord shall you mention no more, and for every man's word shall be his burden." So I'm confused by what you're saying. And then in John 5 is about the Messiah healing the lame man and the witnesses to the Messiah. Okay. So my brother, he started reading to you in verse 41. He started talking to you about how it says, "I receive honor not from men." So have you read the end of John 5? Because it does seem like he's changing subjects here. It says, "I come in my Father's name, and you receive me not. If another shall come in his own name, him you will receive. How can you believe which receive honor one from another, and seek not the honor that comes from God only. Do not think that I will accuse you to the fathers. There is one that accuses you, even Moses, in whom you trust. For had you believed Moses, you would have believed me, for he wrote of me. Sir, do you know what Moses said about the Messiah? But if you believe not his writings, how shall you believe my words? How can you believe the Messiah of the Bible if you don't know what Moses said about him? And then, who is this one who came in his own name that we received? I know you, that you have not the love of God in you. Sir, what is the love of God according to Scripture? I come in my Father's name, and you receive me not. So because we don't have the love of God in us, we don't receive the Messiah who came in his Father's name, but we received the one who came in his own name. Sir, do you know what that's talking about? And then immediately after, he says, if we don't believe Moses, we can't believe him. So if we don't have the love of God in us, and we don't believe what Moses says, and we don't even know what Moses says, how are you going to accept the true Messiah of the Bible? Can you answer these questions for me, sir? Because what you're saying is very confusing.